Ann. Hi, Ann.
Hi,
How are you? Welcome to another episode of Ask Eddie and Ann. Ann, you look great.
thank you.
And I see the fuzz balls are sacked out on the couch there.
In their spots.
Okay, we'll see if they get up and get frisky during this episode. But uh, I'm raring to go. It's been a big day over here, and this is one more part of it. So I am. I'm ready to roll. Shall we dive right in, Ann?
Let's dive. Well, we should mention really quickly that so when this airs, uh North City, Detroit will be starting the next day.
Okay, very good. Very much looking forward to that. I'm excited about it. I think the program is good. We're throwing a wrinkle in to the 1948 theme that we have. We're also doing a one-off of Odds Against Tomorrow in tribute to the late Harry Belafonte. And I'm very much looking forward to the whole long weekend, and I hope I see a lot of folks. Maybe we'll get some Ask Eddie fans to show up, and if you do, please give me, say hi is what I'm trying to say. I'm trying to just say hi, and I do relay everyone's greetings to you, Anne, when I people say they listen to us on this show. The message does get back to Anne. So any secret messages you want to relate to Anne, you can slip me a sealed envelope. Otherwise, and it will remain sealed. Otherwise, I will convey any greetings that you have. Okay.
Yeah, and I do have my little Orphan Annie decoder ring. So,
Oh, very good. Very good. I never had a decoder ring. Who was the guy? No, never mind. We're getting off track
no, no,
already.
no.
Here
We're
we
gonna
go.
stay
Here we
on
go.
topic. We're
Gonna
staying on
stay on
topic.
topic. Okay, am I gonna do number one?
Yes, because there's a foreign language title.
Okay. And this question, leading off, he's our leadoff hitter, is Michael from Post Falls, Idaho. He seems to bat leadoff quite a bit here, which is good. Okay, in a recent episode, Eddie highly recommended the film ROSAURA at 10 o'clock. Uh, he was able to track it down and was impressed with the Rashomon-like construction. Since in the same episode you mentioned the Film Noir Foundation has restored No Abras Nunca Esa Puerta, Never Open That Door, and have restored three other Argentine films, which he owns, Michael points out. Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Is it possible for Rosaura to be restored by the foundation and made available through Flickr Alley? Never say never, but there are no plans for that right now, Michael. We have a good setup in Argentina with our friend Fernando Martin Pena, who is excellent at finding this stuff and clearing the way for us to put them out through Flickr Alley. I don't know at this moment what the source is for Rosara at 10 o'clock. I mean, it's on our list of things that we're aware of, but at this moment there are no plans to do that. I'm excited because the restoration of Never Open That Door is proceeding apace. In fact, right here on my computer screen, underneath everything else I'm looking at right now, are the script for the subtitles. So I'm having fun. I get the last pass at the subtitles before they go to be applied to the film, so that sometimes the translation can be a little iffy, especially when there's slang and things involved. So I like to take a last pass at it to make sure that the initial translation, which often is done by Fernando himself, uh, speaks to an American or at least an English speaking audience, so that everything gets translated just so. Anyway, that's your answer.
Okay. And next question is from our friends Jay and Connie from Ann Arbor, Michigan, who you'll be spending a great deal of time with while
I
you're
will be
in
seeing them
Detroit.
as people are watching this. I am probably with Jay and Connie at this exact time, so we know that they're probably not watching this right now.
Yeah.
They're playing host to me when I'm in Detroit.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you because they take really good care of you while you're there, and it's greatly appreciated.
Indeed, they do. They are wonderful folks, and not only friends of the Film Noir Foundation, but loyal TCM viewers, and they've been to every TCM Classic Film Festival. Um, just good people. So I thank them, and I'm glad that we're friends.
Okay, just read your short story, Doc's Oscar, in the Jewish Noir Volume 1 compilation of Noir short stories. A good read for all who are listening. I love that within the first sentence, these three words appear: Mushiga, cats, and boobs. It doesn't get any better than that. What a great start to a grand story. And what a great twist you reveal in the next to the last paragraph. Can you give us a little background on its origins and when did you write it?
I happen to have on the bookshelf over here a copy of said book. This gentleman, wait, I never can get my screen side right. You know, I could never do the weather on TV because I just
Yeah.
don't know how to do this stuff. So that Kenneth Wishnia is the editor of that anthology, and I think it was years ago. I can't even remember when that book came out now, but years ago, Ken approached me at it was then called GoodisCon in Philadelphia. It's now called just NoirCon, a thing that a guy named Lou Boxer put together. All of it really starting as a tribute to David Goodis, and they gave me. I have it here somewhere in the office. I was given an award for work to preserve noir and blah blah blah. Now that was wonderful. Anyway, that's when Ken asked me if I would contribute to the anthology, and that story, which I will not, no spoilers. People, it's a very good collection of stories. Um, people, I won't spoil it. I wrote it because I had been working on my Gun Crazy book, and my head was filled with great stories about the King brothers who produced Gun Crazy, right? And and you know, every year I travel to Palm Springs because Alan Rohde has his the Arthur Lyons Film Noir Festival in Palm Springs, and it's always amusing to me how many old movie people live out in Palm Springs now. And so I just started daydreaming a story in which Frank King had moved to Palm Springs, which didn't really happen, but that was it. And the Doc referred to in Doc's Oscar is Dalton Trumbo. And Frank King is the guy who, although Kirk Douglas gets all the credit for breaking the blacklist by hiring Trumbo to write the screenplay for Spartacus, it was actually Frank King who did it first with a movie called The Brave One about a boy and his bull. That he learned, he has a bull that's his best friend, and then he finds out that it's being trained to be in the ring, and that won the Oscar for I forget whether it was for best story or screenplay or something. But of course, Trumbo could not put his name on it at that point, and so Frank King put his nephew's name on it. Was I think it was Robert Rich, who is listed as the Oscar winner, and of course he never wrote anything because it's actually Dalton Trumbo. So those things were the basis for what led me to write that story. Writing short stories is a lot of fun. I wish I did more of it. Um, there's a real formula and a technique to it, especially if you're writing a crime story. Anyway, I'm glad that Jay and Connie liked it. I hope they like the other stories in the anthology just as much. It was a good project. Okay.
Okay.
Steve in Mississippi, and I know this is funny because we're probably a little late to the party here, Steve. Our apologies, because I know we don't get around to these questions in a particularly timely fashion. But Steve says he's planning a trip to Italy. Please recommend your essential Italian crime and noir films. Also, I hope to visit a museum dedicated to cinema. Do you have any ideas? Um, well, if you haven't gone yet, my suggestion, I don't know any, I've never been to Rome.
Yeah.
Okay. You've been to Rome, right, Ann?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there's the Dario Argento Museum is in Rome. So he co-owns a bookshop called Deep Red, where I actually picked up a really beautiful penguin paperback from the 50s of the Phantom Lady, which I was very excited about. But in the basement, they have all these like props from his films. And it's really interesting. So you can do like an audio tour, so they turn on the audio and it's Dario talking about, each prop. And what's really clever is that when the tour goes on, then each prop is lit up so it would look the way it does if it was being filmed. So it's really interesting to see the props go from just how they look,
That's great,
like we would in a workshop, and then how different it is once it's lit the way it's supposed to be. So
wow, that's very cool.
Uh,
Okay, I would just suggest going to Bologna. I mean, I go to Bologna. I try to go every year in June because that's where Il Cinema Ritrovato, which is a festival of restoration. So everybody who works on restorations around the world brings their the films that they've worked on every year, and they have retrospectives and things. So it's a wonderful festival of restoration, Il Cinema Ritrovato, and it's great. And that's where they have the Cineteca Bologna, which also has a film laboratory where they do a lot of restoration work and everything. And there's a wonderful little film center right there. It's a little tricky to find. It's kind of hidden away. It's close to the main center of town, but if you've been to Italy, it's like, it can be a little tricky finding things. That would be my recommendation for a place to go. And of course, you're in Italy, so you're always going to eat and drink well. As for the crime and noir films, this is still kind of a work in progress for me. I mean, I'm still really trying to plumb the depths of noir in these various cultures. So for Italy, I'm a neophyte, really. I mean, we've shown stuff at the Noir City festivals. I tend to start with the bigger names because people who are unfamiliar with this stuff will be attracted, like by a film by Michelangelo Antonioni, like Story of a Love Affair, which we showed at Noir City. That was made in 1950 or 51 with Lucia Bozet, the wonderful Spanish actress who was in Death of a Cyclist. She's in that as well. And we've also shown a great picture called Four Ways Out, which I think it's called La Città si difensa, the city defends itself, which is a heist picture that I think was clearly inspired by the Asphalt Jungle. That was made in 1950, and Federico Fellini is one of the screenwriters on that. That's a really good film. And then the other filmmakers that I know that I look for their stuff to see what other noir they have are Giuseppe De Santis, who did a wonderful film in 1948 called Senza Pietà. I think I'm mispronouncing that. It's Without Pity, which is really great. I'm trying to get that for a upcoming Noir City Film Festival. Have you ever heard of the actor named John Kitzmiller?
No.
John Kitzmiller was a soldier, an American soldier, an African American soldier who served in Italy during World War II. And at the end of the war, he stayed and made films in Italy. He made Paisan with Roberto Rossellini, and then he did this film with Giuseppe De Santis, which is really, really terrific. And he worked a lot. And eventually, I think in the late 50s, he won a Best Actor award at the Cannes Film Festival. He's a really terrific little footnote to cinema history. Because he was a non-professional actor who was cast in these movies, and he stayed because he would have never, he probably would have been competing with James Edwards for all of those parts in Hollywood, Home of the Brave and all that stuff. But in Italy, he was the star. and those films are really, really good. And also, the other director I recommend is Pietro Germi. He did a picture called "The Facts of Murder" that we showed. This is really funny. People say, how do you know all this stuff, Eddie?" And it's like, well, because the restaurant around the corner from the Castro Theater where we had Noir City, Poesia, this restaurant, Francesco, the owner, would always show movies on the wall of
Yeah.
the restaurant. And I'm watching, you know, and it's like, this movie looks really good. And he went back and got me the DVD and gave it to me and said, "Tell me what you think." And it was this movie, The Facts of Murder, which the next year I ended up showing at the North City Film Festival because it really was terrific, based on a very famous Italian novel that was written before World War II. And the movie is set after World War II, but it has many of the same themes. And you did you see that when we showed it, Ann? Did you see The Facts of Murder? It's about the police inspector, the Italian police inspector. He's very much like your man Columbo.
Yeah.
He wears black glasses all the time, and he smokes constantly, and he wears a fedora, but he plays stupid with everybody in the town, and it's great. It's a really, really interesting film.
No, I think that I must have missed it when we showed it. It sounds really good.
It's a really good movie, and it has a beautiful score with an amazing, rapturous theme song that I absolutely loved. And that year we had Victoria Mature actually sang the theme to that movie because it was pretty well known. It was a hit. I can't remember the name of it right now, but I said, "Boy, if you could sing this live at the theater, it would be great." And she did, and it was great.
Yeah, don't forget Associone.
The main one. Thank you, Ann.
You're welcome.
Thank you for bailing me out. Yes, Ossessione, Luchino Visconti, and Rocco and His Brothers, another Visconti film, is also very much a noir film with Alain Delon and Renato Salvatore. But Ossessione is the best adaptation of The Postman Always Rings Twice ever. So it's the antithesis of the MGM version, which is so glossy, and this is the down and dirty version of Postman Always Rings Twice, and it's ultra sexy, and you know, I'm drawing a blank. God darn it, I can't remember the actor's name now. Clara Calamai is the actress, and Ted Whipple will kill me because I know he loves this guy. Girotti, Massimo Girotti is the actor's name, and he's every bit as hot as Clara Calamai. So
yeah, absolutely.
That's a fantastic film, and you know, we got to look into it. I don't know what the deal is with Ossessione because I'm embarrassed to say, because you know, the legend had it that you know, Visconti really ran afoul of the authorities, you know, the fascists in Italy when he made that film, because it was very early.
Yeah,
I think he made it in 1941, and they banned the movie and destroyed all the copies of it except the one that Visconti hid in the closet, in the floor of his closet in his villa. You know, for a communist, Visconti was pretty well off. You know,
I was gonna say,
a villa.
The villa sounds nice.
Yeah, he came from money. So and that was it. Apparently, every single copy that you see of Ossessione is the spawn of that one print that Visconti saved. That's a movie that could use a total restoration and you know, revitalization. Not, you know, the film itself, but also just its reputation as the best version of The Postman. Okay.
Sean from Land O'Lakes.
I love
Land
your
O'Lakes,
butter,
Florida.
Yeah, I love your butter.
Yeah, it's great butter. Have you read Somewhere in the Night, Film Noir in the American City, written by Nicholas Christopher? It was the trigger that led to my film noir obsession.
Yes.
Or Ossessione.
His film noir Ossessione, yeah. Very good. That's why you put those questions together. You knew you were going to remember
No,
Ossessione, where I did not.
that was actually an accident.
Oh, okay. I have read it. Needless to say, I have a copy around here somewhere. Um, I I remember the thing I remember most vividly about it was just Nicholas Christopher's story about discovering Out of the Past I think in a cinema in France or something when he was young, and that started his obsession. It was that book came out, I think, just before my film noir book came out.
Yep.
And quite honestly, I remember reading an interview with him where somewhere along the line, and it outraged me at the time because he told this interviewer that he got six figures for writing that book. And now Nicholas Christopher is primarily a poet, right? And so I'm thinking like six figures to write a book about film noir. This guy's out of his freaking mind. And I'm thinking like I got screwed or something, you know. And then I realized he had to have been joking because he was counting the numbers after the decimal point. That had to be
Yeah.
that had to be his little in joke, right? It was six figures because when you're a starving writer, you count what's after the decimal point as well. So anyway, who knows if he actually got paid a full six figures decimal point and then two more figures, that publisher didn't make their money back. That's for certain.
You know, and it's also really interesting to read film books from people that aren't like film writers necessarily, because the BFI has a whole series of like they're really monographs. They publish them,
Yes.
and they're always about one film. And like Salman Rushdie's is definitely the best one I've ever read, and it's about the Wizard of Oz, and it's very much about. And of course, in case people don't know, in India, there's Bali. They have their own film.
Oh yeah, it's
film industry, and so it's just so that one was really good. And then another one that was really good was oh god, the Jack Benny film with Carol Lombard where they play actors.
Oh, To Be or Not to Be.
Yeah, so that one was really interesting because it was written by that monograph is written by a playwright. So he had that kind of background in theater, and it was really interesting to read about that movie from someone who is actually, in theater.
I love reading about films exactly as you say, when it's people who don't necessarily write about films. That can wear me out, to be quite honest. I can get worn out by, I don't like reading film theory necessarily, but I love the practical sense of this is why I love the film because they got this right and this, and I have not read Rushdie's book on the Wizard of Oz, but I definitely will because he's a fantastic writer. But this is something I would like us to do a little bit more of in the Noir City magazine. Is we about the only thing we can coax people into doing is talking about their favorite films.
Yeah.
So we've had a lot of my five favorite noir films, and then you can be anybody. We've had Jello Biafra do my five favorite films. We've had Brett Spiner from Star Trek do my five favorite films. Dennis Lehane, Mike Connolly, have done these, and they're really great. They're great fun, but it's just interesting to see what insights come from people who aren't film people talking about movies. Okay. Carlton in Atlanta, Georgia says, for me, one of the biggest surprises of seeing familiar actors in film noir was seeing Raymond Burr as the heavy. Carlton must have just started watching film noir. Now I look for him in those roles. Loved him and Angela Lansbury and Please Murder Me. a film kind of on our short list of potential restorations. What other later known actors are the biggest surprises for someone getting into film noir? Lucille Ball was a bit of one for Carlton, but Angela Lansbury, not so much if you've seen her in The Manchurian Candidate. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. What do you think, Anne? Anybody? I mean, obviously, I'm going to say William Tallman, who was with
Yeah.
Raymond Burr on Perry Mason, who played Hamilton Berger, and is also, one of the great film noir heavies.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was Fred McMurray, because we used to always watch reruns of My Three Sons. So the first time I watched Double Indemnity, I was so shocked. He's very sexy in that film. I mean, besides being a terrible human being, he's also really, attractive too. So it was just like it was really strange.
Yeah.
And actually, I mean, not noir related, but then when I started watching Preston Sturges films, then William Demarest kept showing up, who of course was Uncle Charlie.
Yeah, Uncle
an
Charlie.
ex-wife
Yeah.
Wilden in the series. So that was another one where it was like, oh my God. He wasn't lying about being in show business.
And isn't it kind of amazing, like how fast that all happened? Because there isn't a lot of time between, like with Fred McMurray. Think about that, right? In 1943, he makes, well, and he was already making movies for years before that, but he makes, Double Indemnity in 1943. Then, like 10 years later, he's in The Caine Mutiny.
Yeah.
And then 6 years after that, and I don't mean to sell short all of the other movies he made in between, but these are like landmark films and then he's in The Apartment, right, with Jack Lemmon and Shirley MacLaine, which is incredible. And then he's son of Flubber and My Three Sons. And it's like altogether, that's maybe 25 years,
Yeah. Well, now,
or less.
Just sorry. And look at the films he did with Barbara Stanwyck. I mean, that's like really kind of cool little jumps too.
Remember the Night, a person.
Remember the Night was first. Yeah. That was, I love that movie, written by Preston Sturges.
Yep.
And you've got that, and then you have Double Indemnity, the Moonlighters, the Western, which
that's
I still
the
haven't
Western.
seen.
And then
Douglas the Sirk film, yeah.
And the title of which, it's so generic, I sometimes forget it. It's like God, I can't remember the title of it. It's embarrassing.
You talk, I will.
It has Tomorrow or something in there.
Yeah, it's got Tomorrow in the title. And once again,
right?
It's like terrible children. God, the children in the Sirk films are always so awful.
That was a 5 favorite of Ileana Douglas. We had Ileana Douglas do a 5 favorites for Noir City magazine, and she chose that film as one of her faves, even though it's really stretching it to call it a film noir. But it gets honorary status because it reteamed Phyllis and Walter.
There's always tomorrow.
There's always tomorrow. That's it.
Because it's ironic.
Tomorrow. Yes. And I would say when we did the restoration of the Argyle Secrets, that was great fun because of all of the TV people who showed up in that one. It had Barbara Billingsley was in it, right? Mrs. Cleaver. And she gets punched in the face. That was kind of an amazing scene in that movie. William Gargan slugs her right in the face. Marjorie Lord, who was on Make Room for Daddy. And then John Banner, who was Sergeant Schultz on Hogan's Heroes, he was in that film as well. And Hugh Beaumont, Mr. Cleaver, was in all kinds of noir films. Anthony Mann's Railroaded, and a picture called Money Madness, and he's in The Blue Dahlia. He's Alan Ladd's buddy in The Blue Dahlia.
And Jane Wyatt.
Jane Wyatt, yes, the man who cheated himself. And Pitfall. Jane, those were her 2 noir films, of course, and she was
God. Marcus Welby.
Robert Young.
Yeah.
Robert Young, yes. yeah, from Crossfire and They Won't Believe Me and The Second Woman. And then, of course, he did a Father Knows Best, or not, yeah, Father Knows Best, right? Right? Yeah, Father Knows Best, and
Oh,
then
that's right. He
Marcus
wasn't
Welby
Father's. That was before Marcus Welby.
with
Yeah,
Jane Wyatt. He was with
with Jane
Jane Wyatt.
Wyatt.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, yes, you know, they're all over the place. Dare I say, I've shown like 3 or 4 movies with Gail Storm, who would be my little Margie, right? She did The Underworld Story, Between Midnight and Dawn, and Abandoned. Those were her 3 noir films. And the biggest one of all, literally, is William Conrad,
Oh yeah, yeah.
right? Who was
Sheriff Matt
Frank?
Dillon
He was Matt Dillon on the radio.
on the radio. Yeah.
He was fantastic in all of these noir films. I mean, he is as ubiquitous as Raymond Burr in the
Hmm.
late 40s and early 50s, and then he became, you know, Frank Cannon on TV,
Yeah.
and then Nero Wolfe after that.
Yeah.
Um, an amazing character, and I will actually be writing a profile piece about him for an upcoming issue of Noir City. His son Christopher comes to the Noir City Festival
Yeah.
in Seattle every year. Really, really great guy. And
Yeah.
I know Christopher thinks the interview he did with me years ago, nothing ever is going to come of it. Well, guess again.
Yeah.
I'm finally getting around to turning that into this profile piece. And the most amazing thing about William Conrad that people probably don't realize is that he was also a director and a producer. And for a time in the 1960s, he was head of production at Warner Brothers. He actually kind of was the chief. I think Jack Warner went on an epic bender, like lost his mind. The ghosts of brothers past came back to haunt him, and he lost his mind and disappeared. And during that period, William Conrad took over production at Warner Brothers. So I'm sure there are many more that people can think of, but those are the ones that, you know, where they started out in movies and then gravitated to television. That's a pretty good list right there.
Okay, so wait a minute. Where are we?
I think we're at number
The
6.
And this is from David. Why does Eddie sometimes use the alias Eddie Von Mueller for some of his Blu-ray commentary tracks?
Because it's not me. Because there actually is a guy named Eddie Von Mueller. I don't know why. I don't know why it's so impossible for people to fathom this, but there is an actual Eddie Von Mueller. I met him. He's a great guy. He's a Godzilla expert. You'll appreciate that.
Yeah.
And he's a good guy. He did a really great interstitial for TCM about Humphrey Bogart's early career. That's terrific. And yeah, I mean, he teaches in Georgia at I don't know the exact university, but he is fully legit, Eddie Von Mueller, and it's just funny. I don't know if they're. I think when we did meet, nobody got a photograph. It would have been if somebody had taken a photograph, because then we could prove once and for all that we are in fact different people. Okay, here is a question from Kathy and Michael in Rockford, Illinois. You often talk about the noir films of Poverty Row and directors of no budget fare like Edgar G. Ulmer, Hugo Haas, and Edward L. Kahn. I'm wondering if there are any worthwhile or at least interesting low budget or independent American noir offerings from a later era. The late 60s and the 70s are thought of as the time of the great neo-noir films, but what about offerings designed to play at drive-in theaters or so-called grindhouses? I'm also curious about regional films or filmmakers, since that era was rich with localized film production. Are you aware of any that could fall under the mantle film noir? Um, it's a really interesting question. I wish I had a great fleshed out answer for you. I would, one of the things that is interesting about this question is the assumption that there was a time of great neo-noir films. I don't really think that there was. I think a lot of it wasn't until the 1970s, the early 1970s, when that new generation of filmmakers who really had watched and studied noir, Scorsese, Paul Schrader, Brian De Palma. De Palma was much more into the horror and suspense stuff than more than the noir stuff. But these people, you know, knew what they were doing and were paying homage. I think the films that Kathy and Michael are talking about are fall more into the sexploitation area. It's like when we were just talking about the Italian films and you mentioned Argento, and so that's like the giallo films
Yeah,
in Italy that are a combination of horror and noir and suspense, crime, horror and suspense, with a
that's what
little
makes them such great films, like
it,
The Triumph.
yeah,
It's all three. It's so great.
it's all three and a little titillation thrown
Well,
in that
well, yeah.
it creeps up on like softcore porn sometimes.
Sometimes, yeah.
Yeah, and
Did you watch The Editor yet, by the way?
no,
Okay.
sounds like something that you're gonna have to tell me about.
Yeah.
Anyway, so the my point being, there aren't maybe as many of those films as you might think, but I'm vamping here as well because one that I know of that is a New York film from that era that I have a sickening fondness for is a movie called Who Killed Teddy Bear with
Oh,
Sal Mineo and Juliet Prowse.
I'm
And
going to be watching that because my friend Nathan lent me a copy and I'm having gum surgery tomorrow. So I'll have lots of time to watch movies. So I will have time to watch it. So I will be watching that in the next
oh,
couple of
okay,
days.
okay. No spoilers.
So,
It's
yeah.
just one of the weirdest. You will want to take a shower after you watch this movie. I mean, just like we were describing, it's kind of a combination horror film, crime film, sexploitation film. It's almost like it was written into Juliet Prowse's contract that she had to be in her underwear for a certain percentage of the movie, right? And Elaine Stritch is in it. I mean, incredible, weird, esoteric performance from her. And the cop. Do you remember a comedian from the 1960s named Jan Murray?
That name
You,
actually sounds familiar.
he used to do all the chat shows on
Yeah.
TV and everything. Jan Murray plays the cop in this movie. I can't even remember who made the film, but I do know that it was photographed quite effectively by Joseph Brun, who is the guy who shot Odds Against Tomorrow.
Okay.
So this guy knows New York City very, very well. So there's that one. There's also down in Oklahoma. Um, Again, I'm not going to remember the filmmakers' names. I'm sorry to say. There was a film made called Stark Fear that Beverly Garland is the star of. It's a low budget, black and white woman in jeopardy film set in Oklahoma. And it's pretty darn good. And I'm going to give a shout out here to Nicholas Winding Refn, the writer director, who has a website called By NWR, just bynwr.com, where he is a devotee of sexploitation and grindhouse movies and all this stuff, and he restores them out of his own pocket and then presents them on his website for free.
Yeah.
So you can find Stark Fear on there, and my good buddy Philippe Garnier wrote a whole essay about the history of that film and who made it and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So
And he also directed Bleeder, which is a film that I adore. And a huge hunk of it is set in a video store. So, and it's so great because, and I've posted the opening before because it's just this pan across this video store to all the different sections and stuff. But I literally almost started crying because I worked in video stores for so long, and it was like it like broke my heart just to see and there's a whole scene then when these guys come in and Mess Mickelson is explaining how the store is laid out. as he's going through all the
Yeah,
sections
yeah.
of stuff. And then in my head, I'm going, oh God, this guy's going to ask about porn. And sure enough,
Well,
it was so
If it's
hilarious.
Refn, the porn is coming. If it's a Refn film, he's he rubs some people the wrong way because he's an obsessive compulsive character. I actually sold him. I had over the years I collected quite a bit of interesting, not the films but the ephemera from all of these grindhouse and sexploitation movies. Right? I'm sure a lot of people listening know that my first book I ever wrote was called Grindhouse: The Forbidden World of Adults Only Cinema. And I'm not going to go into the whole story of how I came to write that book or where I found all the stuff that's in that book. But when Refn found the book, he got a hold of me through our mutual friend Jimmy McDonough, and he bought a bunch of the stuff from me to include in this gigantic book he did with Toshin that was all posters and lobby cards and stuff from sexploitation and grindhouse movies. So if anybody watching is into that stuff, I have a very low cost now out of print book on the subject, and Nicholas Refn has a massive Toshin
Beautiful
tome
Taschen book.
that probably will cost you $75. Mine probably costs $75 now too because it's out of print.
Yeah.
And if you find a copy, they're going to charge you for it. Anyway, the last one I'll throw in is a movie that was made in St. Louis called the St. Louis Bank Robbery from I think it was 1960, and it's a film I am definitely interested in restoring, and it very early Steve McQueen, post Blob, but pre Steve McQueen, pre Wanted Dead or Alive on TV or the Great Escape or any of that stuff. And it's pretty good. It's a very simple bank robbery story, but it's very very well done. Very low budget in black and white. Uh, Real interesting movie, and that's a regional one. So there, Kathy and Michael, I somehow managed to get 3 regional black and white noir films out of that question. That's as good as I can do right now.
Okay, let's see here. And this is from Nathaniel from New Braunfels, Texas. In the past, Eddie has mentioned certain movies that he considers to be more message pictures than full-blown noir for him. Film noir to me is full of movies that have strong messages, and there seems to be an inextricable link between noir and subversive artists who were eventually blacklisted. Last year, even the theme of Noir City was They Tried to Warn Us. I would love to hear you both talk about what the difference for you is between movies like No Way Out, Crossfire, Force of Evil, or even something like The Prowler or Odds Against Tomorrow, and movies that have tinges of noir but fall into the message picture category, and maybe some examples of those and why they don't make the cut. Thanks.
That's a really thoughtful question and a difficult one to answer because it's like calling it noir. Why do you think some pictures are noir and others aren't? I kind of leave it up to in my mind, because I research a lot of this stuff. I kind of take it back to the source and say, what was the motivating factor for the people making these movies, right? So for something like No Way Out, for Joseph Mankiewicz to do No Way Out, that is a message picture more than it would be considered a noir.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a film noir because there's a crime committed, and I did the audio commentary for that film, and I state in the middle of it that the film only really becomes completely a noir if you start watching everything that happens from the perspective of Linda Darnell's character.
Yeah.
Because she is the person trapped.
Yeah.
She's Sidney Poitier is he's Sidney Poitier. He's the most noble black man to ever walk the face of the earth. And Richard Widmark is, his ultimate nemesis, this racist rat bastard. But she's stuck between them, right? Because she's actually has a brain and some kind of compassion, but she comes from the same neighborhood as Widmark, and she feels some kind of, you know, kinship with him or whatever. That's what makes that film kind of noir. You know, Crossfire is a murder mystery, but it was a murder mystery. A lot of times they make a genre story, and you got to be careful sometimes because all of these movies, except The Prowler that were mentioned here by Nathaniel, all of them were novels before they were movies. The novels are probably unquestionably were written for the message,
Yeah.
right? Then Hollywood gets a hold of it and it's like, how are we going to get this up on the screen? Well, we'll hide it behind being a genre picture.
Yeah.
Like Crossfire is a whodunit, right?
Yeah.
Guy gets killed and it's like, who killed him?
Yeah.
And then all the anti-Semitic stuff comes out of that. Force of Evil was a journalistic novel about the numbers racket in New York. Polanski condensed the whole thing down and made it the story of this one man selling his soul for money, right? That was it. Odds Against Tomorrow was a heist picture where it's racism that blows up the whole story, right? And
Yeah.
when
And I think,
go ahead.
and I like Odds Against Tomorrow because Robert Ryan's character is not like Richard Widmark's character or even the character he played in Crossfire. You know, he's on this job and his racism, I don't think he thinks of himself as racist. Like he's not you know what I mean? Like he's not like a guy that's going to go put on, you know, a sheet and burn down a church. And so like that scene when he picks up the little girl and calls her like a pickaninny, and he's saying it very affectionately, but you know, it's a really terrible word.
Well, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Exactly.
And then and like you said, it's just you're seeing just then literally, right? I mean, things blow up, you know, because of this racial conflict, but it's just so much more subtle, you know, than you usually see.
Yeah, and in both cases, in No Way Out and Odds Against Tomorrow, obviously the villainous characters, the two white racist characters, and in some respects, you got to give Harry Belafonte credit when he made Odds Against Tomorrow. I mean, he clearly wanted to make a picture about racism, and he didn't do the Sidney Poitier thing, right? He made his character of Johnny Ingram kind of a racist too.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, he wasn't a noble character at all.
Yeah.
But both of those guys, played by Widmark and Robert Ryan, their whole thing is they are noir characters in the sense that they are desperate men at their wits' end that have run out of options, and their racism is because they have to have somebody beneath them.
Yeah.
There's got to be somebody lower than me in the pecking order, right? And that's exactly how Ryan plays it in Odds Against Tomorrow. And there's no scene that I like more in film noir. Quite honestly, this is than the scene where they're planning the heist, and Earl says, you know, well, I figure we'll get us a couple of shotguns, and then now don't you worry, boy. You know, we'll hold your hand. And then Harry Belafonte, you know, Johnny comes up with the plan to get into the bank without guns. You know, just the box just got to be so big, man, and they're going to have to open that chain, and we're in, you know. And the look on Ryan's face when he realizes he has been totally outsmarted by this guy is everything. It's everything. So anyway,
all right.
I don't know if we answered the question, Nathaniel's question, but we certainly talked about why we like those movies, didn't we? I was going to say that, like, an example of a message picture that some people sometimes call noir, and I don't think it is at all, is something like The Snake Pit.
Yeah.
Right. Or even
the Andy Griffith movie.
Yes. Good call. A Face in the Crowd.
Face in the Crowd.
Yeah. I mean, that's a warning about demagogues in the media. And The Snake Pit is an investigation about what goes on in mental hospitals. You could even say, you know, it's interesting. A picture like Caged, right? The women in prison movie from Warner Brothers. that definitely started out as a message picture. That was the whole purpose behind doing it. Virginia Kellogg went out and researched that and really wanted to expose the conditions in women's prisons. It's so odd that now that film is seen as like the height of camp for some people. It was not campy
I don't understand how people see
when
that
the
as
movie was
campy. That
made.
film really, really was very
Because
dark
it's
because I mean, she just winds, just her character arc. And I don't want to talk about the cat.
yeah. But we won't talk about the cat. But that's because these films inspire people who then go on and do their own thing with them. And with women in prison movies, Caged in particular, I mean, everybody who did that afterwards. What's the famous stage play that was done? Christopher. So it's called Women Behind Bars or something like that. It was a
Yeah.
stage play, and I think Divine played the
Yeah.
warden in it. And um, but you see, then that becomes ground zero for
Yeah.
another generation. And then when they go back and finally see Caged that inspired all of that, they're going to laugh
Yeah.
because it's like, oh, now we're seeing the roots of it all. And it's like, well, this wasn't actually funny at the time that it was released,
Yeah.
But there's just something. I'm telling you, if I went out and said to 10 people tonight, I'm going to go home and watch a women in prison movie, they're all going to laugh.
Right.
They're all going to laugh because they think I'm going home to crack up and watch some sleazy Sybil Danning movie or something.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, that was a thing. All the way back to the silent era, women in prison movies were a thing.
Oh God, there's the one with Barbara Stanwyck
Oh,
where she walks into the prison and people start screaming "fresh fish."
yeah, and that's the one. Is that Ladies They Talk About?
Ladies They Talk About.
Ladies They Talk About, and that was the one that was. Now we're really starting to. Here we go. We're gonna
We're going down a women in prison rabbit hole.
We're detouring now. That was the one that Dorothy Mackay wrote that, and she was Paul Kelly's lover, and Paul Kelly beat her husband to death.
Yeah.
And they both got sentenced to prison. And Dorothy Mackay wrote Ladies They Talk About in prison, and then it was eventually made into that movie starring Barbara Stanwyck. And as we all know, Paul Kelly served time for manslaughter in San Quentin and then got out, and not only did he resume his acting career, he married Dorothy Mackay when he got out of prison. And her daughter, by the man that he killed, he adopted her and she became his stepdaughter.
Yeah.
And you ask if noir exists in real life. Yeah.
And there's your answer.
There's your answer. Okay, here we go. Cliff in Fort Collins says, I recently watched the Douglas Sirk 1951 film noir, Thunder on the Hill.
No,
potential noir or not candidate there.
No.
And he noted the similarities between the bell tower scene in that movie and the great bell tower scene in Alfred Hitchcock's 1958 Vertigo. Are there other films that include a bell tower scene? And more generally, what other noir films have great staircase scenes? Now, you suddenly opened this wide there at the end, Cliff. It went from bell tower to just general staircase. And I'm going to think here.
Well, The Stranger is what I immediately think of with bell towers. The Stranger.
The Stranger. Probably equal to the scene in Vertigo. Very different. Very different. The scene in The Stranger is very Baroque and it's fabulous. But and if people haven't seen that, I really don't know why people consider that such a minor film by Wells. It's so well written. And
it is, and I love Edward G. Robinson so much. in
but
that?
but
No.
you know, oh, I hope you don't know the answer to this because I want to tell you this and have you freak out. Do you know who was originally supposed to play that part in The Stranger, the Edward
Uh-uh.
G. Robinson role of the Nazi hunter?
No.
Do you know who Orson Welles cast in that role?
No.
Agnes Moorehead.
Oh,
Is that fantastic?
damn.
That would have been
Okay, that's up there with Reflections in a Golden Eye. Houston wanted Audie Murphy for Marlon Brando's part. That would have been so much better. I told Ted that. Do you know Ted's an Audie Murphy fan?
okay. We're blowing each other's minds
I
tonight. This
know,
is
I
pretty
know.
good.
Yeah. Anyway, sorry.
But
Back
but
to back to Bell
but
Towers.
Agnes Moorehead as a Nazi hunter
Oh, that would
would
have been so
have. Now I
fantastic.
can I guarantee you that if that had happened, the critical reputation of The Stranger would be 10 times what it is today.
Yeah.
Just because he would have been so ahead of his time having a woman play that part, right? And I mean, that just goes to show you how incredible Orson Welles really was, you know, the way his brain worked. And, I mean, Robinson is terrific in the film, but all I can think of now, it's like when I think about Touch of Evil, and I just see Ricardo Montalban playing Vargas instead of Charlton Heston, and it's like, oh my God, that would have been incredible. Plus, you just sit there thinking, like, what if Ricardo Montalban and Janet Leigh actually were a couple, right? Not that she didn't do too bad with The Offspring as it was, but
Yeah. Yeah.
not that Tony Curtis was any piker or anything, but um, yeah, that would have been something. Anyway, staircases, they're all over the place in noir. I'm thinking of like a couple of those Argentine films that we restored. El Vampiro Negro has a fantastic staircase scene because the cage elevator goes down in the middle of the spiral staircase, which is just a fabulous effect. Um, I love the staircase in Strange Love of Martha Ivers.
Oh yeah.
At the end, they use that very, very well. Um,
Sunset Boulevard.
so, your staircases tonight, Anne. You're far ahead of me on this. You got The Stranger and Sunset Boulevard. Okay, let's can we call Sunset Boulevard the greatest use of a staircase in
Oh,
movies?
absolutely. That final scene. People have never seen that movie know that scene. People that
Yeah,
know anything about noir know that scene. You know.
that's because they watched the Carol Burnett show.
Oh well, God. God, oh God, I love her doing that character. It's so hilarious. But you know what's really great is her Mildred Pierce.
Well, boy, did we take another detour here. And who designed all of those clothes?
Oh yeah, yeah. It's the same guy who designed for Cher.
Bob Mackie.
Bob
Bob
Mackie.
Mackie.
Yeah.
And sure enough, because I interviewed Bob Mackie on the last TCM cruise, he is just the nicest guy. He's so wonderful. And we talked all about that. We talked all about how he pretty much.
Remember Gone with the Wind when the curtain rod was
Oh
still
yeah,
in the dress?
and and
Sorry.
what was the anyway? Yes, but Bob Mackie said that the Carol Burnett show was so important to his career because he was a movie crazy young kid.
Yeah.
He said he had pictures of Barbara Stanwyck all over his walls. And when he got the gig designing for Carol Burnett, she was encouraged by him to do all these satires of famous movies so that he could recreate the clothes.
Yeah.
Right. And it's just fantastic. Just
Yeah.
fantastic.
The Born to Be Bad skit she did was also hilarious. And
She's
that's a bit of a
great.
deep dive. Like Born to Be Bad wasn't really that well known.
And it's interesting, like how many of those I'm older than you,
Mhm.
but there's so much stuff that I saw the first time on the Carol Burnett show
Oh yeah, me too.
where they were doing their parodies. It was like Mad Magazine. They
Yeah.
were doing Mad Magazine movie parodies, and you'd see them very often before you ever saw the movie.
Hmm.
Like, I don't know what they're making fun of, but that'll show you how great they were as, comedic performers. Harvey Korman and Tim Conway, Vicki Lawrence,
Vicki Lawrence.
and Lyle
Lyle,
Wagner.
Lyle Wagner. Yeah.
Lyle Wagner was
Yeah.
the other guy. Yeah, there had to be one really handsome guy in the cast.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Thunder on the Hill. Okay. So this is from Michael in Chicago. Wondering if you know anything about the scenes cut from The Man I Love DVD. The film was listed as being 96 minutes long, but the DVD version's only 90 minutes. The cover poster art lists the song Bill, but it's not in the print. Do you know if these cuts were made to the original film or put in later? Also, do you know if there are any plans to restore Angel Face and release it on Blu-ray
Okay.
HD?
Angel Face is on Blu-ray from the Warner Archive collection. So, and I hope they, ported my audio commentary over to it. I like that commentary. That was a good one. I don't know the answer about The Man I Love. I sometimes get a little confused about this. Sometimes the differences in running times really do mean something. Other times I think it just might be a mistake, and that people are on a wild goose chase looking for stuff. Now, if there's a song that's listed Bill, and then it's not in the movie, then they obviously cut it out for time. And whether I can't imagine they would have done that on first release. It probably would have happened when they sold it to television,
Uh-huh.
and they have to cut it down to fit it in a certain time frame. They probably would just cut a song out. That's how they would do it without losing plot. I'm going to consider that a subject for further research because I don't know the answer to that, but I know who to call to find out. So I will make a note to do that, and maybe on a later episode, I'll have an answer for Michael on that one. Okay, Don wants to know. His question is about some very difficult to find Alan Ladd titles. That used to be a lot of them, specifically Chicago Deadline and Saigon, which was his last film with Veronica Lake. And he asks, is there litigation or what's the story here? Any hope for a release of these films in the future? We'll see. I mean, the thing you need to know is that Alan Ladd made these movies for Paramount, but at a certain point in his tenure at Paramount, uh, which lasted into the early 1950s before he formed his own production company, Jaguar Productions. At a certain point, Paramount sold its film library to Universal. And oddly, the cutoff date is like October 15th, 1948 or 49, something. And everything that was in production before that date would go to Universal. And if it was not in production yet, it would stay with Paramount. So you have things like, with a few exceptions, I think Sorry Wrong Number remains a Paramount film, even though it was already had been produced and was in theaters in 1948. So some of these, Chicago Deadline slipped between the cracks because for the longest time nobody knew who actually owned the rights to the film. The same may very well be true of Saigon. So that's part of the issue, but I would not be at all surprised if that gets rectified soon. But one of those studios owns it, so it's not anything that the Film Noir Foundation is going to get into. But Chicago Deadline, for people who really want to see it, we have shown it because the print is at UCLA Film and Television Archive, and I'll check and see who the rights got cleared with for that screening that we just had in Chicago. But I wouldn't be surprised if that comes out pretty soon. I have no idea why Saigon, other than it could be just a really bad movie. I've never seen it. Why that one is. I'm just surprised that there isn't a Lad and Lake box set.
Yeah, I
You would
know.
think that would be an obvious thing, but um, sometimes the obvious things don't happen.
No.
Okay.
Okay, and this is from Chuck. Openings. I've always been fascinated by the first 90 seconds of noir films, and I just like to pay tribute to my favorite openings and listen to you add in yours as well. First, the big combo. Please don't mock the nighttime city shots of New York. They give us a chance to settle in and tell us that it will be an urban story. so that yeah. And then next, an even bigger big Manhattan scene at night is, of course, Sidney Falco's Domain and Sweet Smell of Success. The Elmer Bernstein score doesn't hurt either. And this is a delicious one, repeat performance. How could we live without the opening and the clock, of course, almost at midnight on New Year's Eve, and what a voiceover by Richard Basehart. Then my favorite. Oh, you want to do your comment now? Or, well,
That is not Richard Basehart. That is not Richard Basehart doing the voiceover at the beginning. It's John Ireland, who's not even in the movie. He just does the voiceover. But it's definitely John Ireland.
Yeah. This is my favorite with its perfect dialogue. My gun is quick. Such great dialogue on the payphone. There's Detective Mike Hammer. If any noir moment defines sarcasm, this one does, as he calls his secretary. Oh, and yours.
Well, I see the common denominator in Chuck's thing. Not repeat performance. The first two have the big jazzy 50s brass scores, opening David Raxon's score for the big combo and Bernstein's score for Sweet Smell of Success. Those are good ways to start a film. My favorite opening of a noir film is Crisscross, with the camera swooping out of the sky into the parking lot behind Slim Dundee's roundup, and they catch the headlights flash over Lancaster and Yvonne DiCarlo, and they're having their little secret tryst in the parking lot. And then she, it's just so wonderful. It's everything you love about noir. It's a secret meeting. You get this sense of sex and danger and all this stuff. And then at precisely the right moment, Siad cuts to that close-up of Yvonne DiCarlo, my all-time favorite close-up in film noir, where she looks right into the camera and gives her pleading thing to Lancaster. Then it'll be just like it should have been from the start, just you and me, Steve. And it's unbeatable. That's my favorite opening in film noir. What about you?
It is now I, the Jury, which, if people don't know, is a 3D Mike Hammer film. And it was shot by John Alton. And that is the best use of 3D I have ever seen. Like, I've never seen cinematography in 3D the way that John Alton uses it. And so it opens up, and this guy's been shot, and he's like crawling towards the camera, because on the back of the chair, the sort of in the front is this guy, and he's like trying to, and the thing is, it takes forever. It's not like small.
Well, it takes the opening credits.
Yeah, and it's agonizing, because you just really feel the guys, and it's just, and that's the main thing, is how long they held that, which was like something you see in Better Call Saul now.
Yeah, that was pretty. And you saw that for the first time last Christmas, right?
On the big screen in 3D. Oh my God!
Noir City Christmas, baby. That was pretty great.
God, that was just, like I said. I've never seen someone use 3D as effectively as Sean Alton did in that film.
It's so funny, because when we planned that night, usually in my traditional Noir City Christmas shows, we do a double bill. But it was like, what are you going to put with I, the Jury?
Yeah.
I mean, it was like, this is enough. This is enough. I mean, it's a weird film. What do you think of the film overall?
It's a weird film. I think my favorite part was just when Mike is looking at the scrapbook there's an older character who's in it. who's with a younger man. They're both male, you know, and it's like he's looking at these photos, and Mike cannot figure out that these guys are lovers, and it's
Yeah,
so hilarious.
well, one of the things about that film that I enjoy, I mean, it's not a particularly well directed film,
Mm,
and it is weird because it exposes a lot of what detective stories are, which is a succession of scenes of a detective interrogating different people.
yeah,
And they're just dialogue scenes. It's like one freaking dialogue scene after another. But, Biff Elliott was not bad because as Mike Hammer,
yeah, yeah,
because Mike Hammer is not the sharpest tool in the shed, right? And he's just like thrashing his way through this movie.
yeah,
You know, Ralph Meeker is much more cunning.
yeah,
You look at Ralph Meeker's eyes on screen, and you know he's devious and he's got something working behind the eyes, right? Biff Elliott was just kind of like, "What are you talking about? What are you doing? Yeah, yeah, you can't say that to me." He was just like wound up all the time, and it's like, dude, calm down, just relax.
yeah.
Can't say that that was not an accurate portrayal of Mike Hammer.
No, yeah, exactly. Yeah,
That's a good one. There are plenty of other great openings.
yeah.
I'm presenting a film
Oh,
coming up on Noir Alley called Woman in Hiding that has a really good opening. Under the Ida Lupino driving recklessly down a back road. It looks like this. It looks like she's racing Robert Mitchum in Thunder Road, and then the car goes off a bridge into the river, and it's like, what the hell? And then wasn't that Ida Lupino driving that car? And then she has a very much a Sunset Boulevard style voiceover where she's like, "Is she dead?" And then she starts narrating the film. It's good. It's effective.
and
Okay.
also the Sam Fuller film, uh,
Oh,
with Kiss in the
the
title,
Naked
The
Kiss.
Naked Kiss. That is
Yes.
a frigging amazing
Good one.
opening.
Good
Like it
one.
was like I was watching, it was like, what the hell?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, classic. Sam
Oh,
Fuller was always good at openings because as a
yeah,
guy who was an ink-stained wretch and a crime reporter, he knows the value of a punchy opening paragraph. So,
absolutely.
uh,
Oh God.
it's
I mean,
not noir at all.
the
Go
opening
ahead.
of 40 Guns.
That's just what I was going to
That's what
say.
you're gonna say. That is
Just
my
what I was
all-time
going to say.
favorite movie opening, and I saw that in the theater, and I almost passed out.
Yes, that is my favorite. If you said what's your favorite opening of a Barbara Stanwyck movie, I would say 40 Guns without question.
Yeah,
It's that's Sam Fuller at his absolute best, just thinking like a picture maker.
yeah,
It's just like wow. So folks, if you haven't seen 40 Guns, that's my recommendation for tonight.
absolutely. You should all go watch 40 Guns.
It's pretty great.
Yeah,
How do you fit that? People ask me all the time, like, what are your favorite westerns? And it's like, how do you? I always say the Wild Bunch is my favorite western, but I have so many that I like. But then it's like, how can I forget 40 Guns? I mean, I love it. It's so weird.
I know
It's
that would go in my top 10 easily.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing and it's great. It's just, I mean, it's just Barbara Stanwyck's so amazing in that, and just her and Sam Fuller working together is just perfect. There's something so perfect about the two of them having done a film together, and that it was a western.
yep,
Yeah, I know, because my top 10 westerns are kind of all over the place because I like a lot of different types of westerns.
yeah.
Um,
Well, Anne, we did it. We got through this one. Um, that was fun.
yeah, it was fun. So to let people know where we are, so we're still in February questions. So if you're wondering why your question hasn't been answered yet, that's where we're really trying to do this as much as possible and get caught up on our questions. If you would like to know how to submit a question, basically you sign up for our newsletter for free at filmnoirfoundation.org. And then we send out a newsletter, and that's how we solicit questions for for Ask Eddie, and we will eventually get to your question.
We'll eventually get to your questions. I know.
Because we answer everything because we want everybody's question to get answered. So that's, I mean, so
and if a couple of people have asked me, might as well throw this out there.
Yeah.
Like, why don't you do these live? And it's like, the answer should be readily apparent. We don't do it live because look at how long it takes us when we're doing it on prepared, pre-submitted questions. If we did it live, we just hack people off even worse because, you know, it'd take hours and hours for the way we do this to get through it all, you know. So what I'm going to suggest is that, you know, people submit their questions, try to keep them somewhat concise, you know. You know, we'll read the whole thing. I tend to start paraphrasing if the questions go on too long because I just want to get I want to get to as many as we can get to. So anyway, and I also just want to give a quick pitch for by the time you see this, the new issue of the Noir City magazine should be out, which is our true crime issue. The first issue completely under the editorial stewardship of Imogen Sarah Smith. She did an absolutely bang up job. It's terrific. I have it was great fun to turn around and submit a piece to a different editor. That was nice. And so I do like an overview of the history of true crime movies during the film noir era. And Imogen does a wonderful essay on the look of true crime going all the way back to the silent era and then up through the noir films that we know, the semi-documentary, quote unquote, semi-documentary films. And there's all sorts of other great stuff. Danilo Castro does a great article about films adapted from true cold cases where they don't know who the culprit is. How do you make a movie when you don't know who did it? Very interesting. And John Ranovich does a great piece on this obscure film Roger Toohey Gangster, and he compares it to the true story of Roger Toohey, who was a Chicago gangster with a very interesting backstory.
How do people get the magazine, Eddie?
People can get the magazine if they sign up for the mailing list, and then they donate a minimum of $20. We'll get you a year's subscription to the magazine, and I want to clarify that it gets you the digital version of the magazine, not the print edition. The print edition follows the digital edition by about a week or a week and a half, and the digital edition has interactive links and things like Imogen in her story talks about this fabulous silent film Regeneration. We actually have a link that will take you right to the film so you can watch the entire film on your laptop. You don't get that in the print edition, but the print edition is great. You can order it from Amazon, and just be aware that Amazon keeps the bulk of that money. We don't get it, but people like the print edition so much that my recommendation is to buy both.
Yeah. And you can always just, you know, throw us some bucks whenever you guys want. If you like an episode of Ask Eddie, or you're just feeling flush or whatever, we take donations of all sizes. It does not have to be a lot of money. And this is really how we raise funds for the restoration work. I mean,
it's not the only way, but
we
like to keep it very real because it's good to have people. I appreciate very much that people donate what they can afford to donate. That matters a great deal. I don't want people to think like, well, I have nothing to do with this because there, you know, you just apply for grants or you get some big corporation to do the work. And it's like, no, not really. That's kind of not how this works. I mean, we put on the film shows, you know, we put out a magazine, we do all this restoration work, and truly the bedrock of all of these efforts is the grassroots fundraising amongst film noir fans around the world. So I hope that wasn't too big a pitch, but it happens to be the truth. So
yeah, you know, and like I said, we appreciate it. It doesn't have to be huge. It really doesn't. Indeed. You know, and I know because there's like someone that I joined their Patreon on because they do a really great YouTube channel on Colombo. you know, and it's not a lot of money I'm giving her every month, but I like supporting her because I can tell her videos are extremely work intensive. Like there's a lot of editing, a lot of research, and like, you know, and I know she's never going to be a huge YouTuber. You
Yeah,
know, it's a
yeah,
really specific thing, but you know, it feels good to support people if you like what they're doing, even if it's in a small way. It's still something.
absolutely. Well, Anne, I'm hoping we're going to do another one of these pretty soon, but I'm hoping that some of you folks come out and say hi in Detroit uh, over the next few days. And then in October, I'll be in Silver Spring, Maryland for what we call Noir City, DC, at the AFI Silver Theater. I'll be there the 13th to the 15th of October. And then I got some other things. I'm doing the TCM cruise. I'm going to a film festival in Mexico. And then before you know it, it'll be December in time for Noir City Christmas. And then and then a whole new year starts, and then we do it all over again. Then we do it all over again. Okay.
Okay. So
And that was terrific. Thank you
yeah.
so much. And everybody, thank you so much for the questions. And we will see you next time.
See you next time. Bye.